Olá, amigos do Capital Projects Podcast. Estamos aqui iniciando mais uma série especial, dessa vez gravada diretamente do Seminário Internacional de Gestão de Projetos do PMI São Paulo. Essa série, com apoio da Planisware e da Prosperi, vai trazer novas entrevistas. Vamos falar aqui com ilustres convidados. Então eu espero que você acompanhe aqui toda essa série, mais uma no Capital Projects Podcast. Vamos juntos? Welcome to another episode of the Capital Projects Podcast here at the PMI São Paulo Project Management Congress. And I have the honor to introduce you Jeremy Scully, the Senior Director for New Product Development for the Americas at Planisware. Once again, he participated almost a year ago and he is responsible for Planisware here. And Jeremy, welcome to the Capital Projects Podcast. And once again, thank you for sponsoring this initiative here.
Our pleasure. Thank you for having us. It's always a pleasure.
I was attending your presentation yesterday talking about the challenges in project management and the project economy. So let's start by there. So how do you see, what is the project economy and how do you see the challenges that we face right now in project management?
Yeah, great question. Honestly, the project economy is something that's sort of new and sort of evolving and taking shape and taking form now. It's an economy where companies' value is tied to the projects that they're investing in. The project's value is tied to the solutions to global challenges like the UN Sustainable Development Goals or ESG. So the project value is based on how we're solving those problems and those challenges in the world. That's the project economy. There's a slight difference in sort of mentality on how, the projects that we invest in, but also in how we work on the projects. These projects are, as we know, extremely complex, right? They're huge, right? Sustainable energy, great. I mean, we know, and there's lots of reports that show that the Andes is one of the best places in the world, if not the best place in the world, to produce renewable energy. It's going to be a lot of investments there. There's going to be a lot of infrastructure projects, but not just infrastructure. We also need new product development, right? We need new products. We don't have the right products to build everything in the most efficient way or to store or capture the energy. We need new IT projects, new software projects, new service projects. So all of these different project types are going to be tied together. Mm-hmm. Our value as employees is going to shift over time. No longer going to be based on what my title is or where I sit in the hierarchy of my organization. My value as an employee is going to be directly tied to my role on the project that I'm assigned to. It's really that simple. If I'm the project leader for a small or mid-sized project at an organization, my value is not as great as it would be if I was the project manager on our biggest project. So everything's going to be tied to what role am I playing and what project am I assigned to. The other aspect, which is really tricky, and organizations are just now starting to try and figure it out, is each of these functional areas, project controls and engineering, construction, IT, new product development, innovation, professional services, they all have nuances in the way that they manage projects. There's certain things that are extremely important to them in how they do it. Construction, obviously, working with suppliers and managing contracts, right? It's a little bit different than a CPG company that's producing beer or whiskey, right? Yeah. So there's those nuances, and being able to allow these functional areas to work in their methodology with their nuances, while at the same time sharing and accessing data with everybody else is going to be extremely important. And the companies that figure that out are going to excel and advance a lot faster. There's a big topic of AI and how we can use AI for project management. can't use AI to its fullest extent if all the data is not in the right place or in the same place.
Sure.
So solving this challenge of allowing people to work in their nuances while sharing the data so everybody else has it and so that the AI capabilities have it as well is going to be one of the greatest solutions that I think humankind has ever seen.
And project management is becoming even more complex because, as you said, we are so used to have different ways of dealing with projects in different departments. So we still have the capital projects department, the IT department, and innovation and new product development. So, but when we talk about the new challenges that we are facing, when we are talking about that every project now is a technology project in a certain way, so we need to break those barriers and create a way of managing enterprise projects as a whole.
Absolutely.
So it will require more from the professionals, more and even more research, more study, and more personal development. So we are capable of being part of even more strategic projects, as you said.
Yep. I think the biggest thing is how you manage the data and how you use the data. And it's an investment in technology, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think anybody has a reluctancy to share their data with another department or collaborate with another department. I think everybody wants to do that, right? I think the challenge is that people don't know how, right? I'd like to say that there's only two types of data, right? Data I have and data I need. Everything else
usually is not the same.
It's not, right? I know what data I have, right? I know what data I need, and I probably know who I need to get it from. The real challenge is I don't have a reluctancy to share my data, but who do I share it with? When do they need it? I mean, if I don't even know who needs it, well, how am I supposed to know when they need it or in what format they need it? I don't have a reluctancy to share the data, fine, but I don't know with who. So when companies are using different PPM solutions in different functional areas, their data worlds are extremely different. I mean, let's face it, they're entirely different. Their data model is different.
Completely.
Their data structure is different, right? Their processes are different. And most likely they're using Excel, most likely using Microsoft Project, right? They're not using a true project portfolio management solution that helps organizations plan from strategy, developing a strategy, aligning the portfolio to the strategy, ensuring you have the resources, and then the nitty gritty of project management, managing the schedules, the resource, the cost, the workflows, and having everything flow together, right? Using disparate systems in different departments makes that almost impossible to do. So I think the biggest solution to this challenge that organizations have over the next 16, 25 years, right? By the time we get to 2050, what's the world going to look like? In order to get there and solve some of these really big challenges that we have, that data has to be able to be shared so we can make better decisions. Now, Planisware has customers in each of those categories, and we have customers that use our solution for those specific reasons. For instance, EDF in Europe, huge nuclear power plants, right? They use Planisware for all of their project controls and engineering projects. One specifically is shutting off a plant, doing all the maintenance on the plant, turning the plant back on. They use Planisware for that. So we've learned from them and from others on how to, and we've built their best practices into the tool. So how do you manage best practices for managing project control, engineering, and construction projects, right? We can allow those teams to work within their nuances. We have 33% of the top R&D spenders in the world as customers that use Planisware to develop new products. I'm talking Ford, I'm talking Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, escaping some of the others, but we have 33% of the top 100, right? So the whole innovation process, the new product development process, the stage gate process, we have all of those best practices that we've learned from our customers. So any company that wants to do new product development or innovation, we have the best practices already built for you. IT, we have some of the biggest companies in the world. Archer Daniel Midland, in the top 50. Procter & Gamble uses for global IT projects. Pacific Gas and Electric, the largest in the United States and in California, uses it for IT. So we have all these pieces. And Planisware is flexible enough to be implemented at the corporate level so that each of these departments can use one instance of Planisware. All the data now, instead of having different data worlds, we have one data universe. Now, we don't have to worry about who I need to share the data with. I just use the tool the way I need to. When I need data, I don't have to ask anybody. It's there. When somebody needs my data, they don't have to ask me. It's there. I don't need to know who to share. So I think that's going to be one of the really big transformations, is getting away from Microsoft Project, getting away from Excel, and having one tool across the entire corporation.
Yeah. I know some clients. I work a lot with mining and metal, oil and gas, and even when we get new projects from research and development, the project team who takes charge since the engineering starts in the project at the conceptual engineering, they don't have the data from research and development. So that's one point. So you have the whole chain of development. The company is worried about the time to market, but they cannot see the whole cycle in one tool. That's one problem. The second problem is some companies change teams from one phase to the other inside engineering, like from conceptual to basic engineering, they change teams. The second team doesn't get the same data from the previous team. So it's the same project, but the data don't comes along with the responsibility. So they start over in some things. Of course, I can receive the engineering, the planning, the schedule and so on, but the project changes a lot and you just miss the requirements and all the agreements that you had with the business sometimes. And once again, you cannot see the whole life cycle at the same time. So it's a huge challenge because we have this across different departments and we also have the problem with the data inside the same project when we change teams. So yeah, if we want to be more efficient and be more innovative and be more, be faster to get to the market, we need to change the solution.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And like I said, there's having one solution, and clearly I have a bias, but having one solution makes the most logical sense, right? Having different solutions integrated together can get you there, but it's not as efficient and it's not as insightful. And I like to tell,
harder to do. And
it's harder to do, more
expensive.
costly, sure. But even the insights, I like to tell this story that I love Android Auto, right? I use it on my phone. As soon as I get in my car, I plug it into my car, right? It has the maps, it has my books, it has my text messages, my emails, everything, right? Everything I need. But one day, for some reason, it wasn't working. I think the cable was broken or something, so it wasn't working. So I had to use the navigation system that's built into my car, which I never use. It's fine, right? It doesn't have my emails. Sort of does, but I like Android Auto, right? But what was striking to me was I put in, I just tapped home and it calculated the best route, right? Perfect. Told me what time I was going to get there, has how many miles it takes to get there. But then a little warning popped up on the infotainment system and it said, you don't have enough gas. And I went, wait, what? Now, with Android Auto, which, best in class is great, right? I have to figure that out. I have to notice that. If I don't, I'm in big trouble, right? Yeah. Because Android Auto doesn't have access to how much gas I have, to this actual system of the car, right? It has lots of insights, but not all of the data that it needs. So that really struck me that here's an integration that's incomplete. Using one system that has all of the data, I can find that they find that insight for me without me having to look, Android Auto and say, oh, it's 200 miles, and then look at my dashboard and say, oh, it says I can only go 95 miles. I need to get gas, and make that connection myself. And information is really about making connections. And as projects get more complex, the faster you can make those connections and gain those insights, the sooner you can solve problems and solve challenges that won't disrupt your project and like you said, time to market. I mean, who doesn't love time to market, right? So finding those insights and making those connections faster is going to be a huge determinant between which companies continue to succeed and which companies lag behind.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, the needed resources for the project, I was talking yesterday with the guys from ADM, and they said that now with Planisware, we can finally see the use of resources in our portfolio is much easier to get to the executives and show how many more people I need for my project.
Sure.
Something that we usually don't have because we have different sets of data. And also there are research that already discussed about this in the podcast, that usually companies have 2.5 times more projects than resources that they have.
At least.
But they don't see it.
Right.
So if I don't have all the things together in the same basis, I will not see it.
No. And I think that number is probably higher, especially if they...
Yeah. They said that too. 2.5, that's good.
If you account for the zombie projects, I'm sure that number is a lot higher, right? Those projects where management says, yeah, we're not going to keep doing this anymore, and other people didn't get that communication or that email or missed it, and they're still working on the project. Project's not live anymore. It's not supposed to be.
Not supposed to be.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
and how do you see the role of the CPO, the Chief Project Officer? There's something that comes with the project economy, and we need more, how can I say, span of responsibility and strategic vision from the guy that runs the projects in the company.
No, it's a role that is definitely emerging. I can't think of any of our customers that has that role officially yet. I do have one customer that he's the VP of the PMO, so he oversees all of the projects across the organization. I think he's doing the role of the Chief Project Officer. He just doesn't have that title yet. So the Chief Project Officer, I guess it goes back to a couple of assumptions that we have to make first, right? We believe and we sort of all understand that the projects you choose today will define who you are in the future, right?
Yeah.
And the only way to accomplish your strategy is through projects. So why do we not have somebody in the C-suite that has a voice and opinion on what projects we're selecting, and it's their responsibility to make sure that they're successful?
It shouldn't be that hard to realize that from the executive level, right?
Exactly, right? It's not the CFO's job. It's not the CEO's job. It's not the CTO. It's not the CIO. All of them right now, it's done by committee. But what happens is once those decisions are made, there is not one person or one role that ensures the entire organization has efficient project management methodologies in place, adapted to the nuances of the functional areas, that they have the tools to be able to do them, and is responsible for the execution and bringing the value of the project back to the company. That role doesn't exist quite yet.
Yeah,
it's emerging, and I think people are starting to understand that. The directors of the PMO, the heads of the PMO, are starting to take a little bit more initiative towards that end, but they don't have the title and they don't have the seat yet. In the future, as our projects our challenges get harder and harder, we start to better understand the impact of what we're doing. CPG companies, for instance, as we talked about, right? If we know 35% of all projects fail, right?
Yeah.
So if we can reduce that number, especially in the CPG industry, then we're reducing not only inefficiencies and saving money at the organization, but we're reducing waste.
Mm-hmm.
And could be significant amount of waste. So those decisions and tying the choices and the selections back to these global challenges and ensuring the value, ensuring that we're completing projects on time and on budget, saving money, but also producing value is I think is gonna emerge more and more.
And one example, I was talking recently to a friend who is managing a $1 billion project. And he's doing development, and he cannot get enough resources for his project. He's very lean in resources. And he was talking that we are now implementing a new ERP at our company, and the CEO is personally involved. Mm-hmm. All the executives are personally involved. They got the best people from every department to this project.
Yeah.
But my project is the most strategic for the company. It will bring billions in 20 years. And I cannot have more people.
Again,
so there's no CPO, right? The executive that has the more say at the committee will get the money, will get the attention, right? I'm not saying that it's not important, but there's no a single executive looking at across all departments and say, okay, guys, but this is also important, or even more important.
Unfortunately, I think still as we talked about the project economy, right? The value that the project brings, right? And your role on the project that you're assigned to. I think one thing that I probably left out, which just maybe sort of light bulb, right, is right now, unfortunately, I think the value of projects is still defined by who's the sponsor.
Yes.
Right? And that could be a good thing. In the case of your friend, it might be a bad thing, but I think in general, it could be a good thing, right? As long as the executives are, sponsoring the most valuable projects, which I think still probably needs to shift a little bit. But if you look at Pfizer, it's a perfect example, right? For the COVID vaccine, the sponsor was the CEO. He was involved in everything. And we learned quite a bit about how they got the vaccine to market because they're one of our customers. And we were extremely impressed and honored and maybe even a little humbled when we learned that they used our solution, the Planisware solution, to manage the resources and the deliverables and all the aspects around the COVID vaccine project. And with the CEO, as it's a perfect example of the project economy because there was all kinds of functions involved. It wasn't just the science of the vaccine or the packaging of the vaccine. It was, with Pfizer in particular, we know that there would need to be a refrigeration system. It had to be kept at a certain temperature. So they had to invent something entirely new on the spot. They partnered with other organizations, right? Which is hugely important in the project economy. You're going to have to partner with outside organizations. Yes. But there was construction, there was infrastructure, there was transportation, there was new products for the refrigeration, there was new IT projects to regulate the remotely the temperature, there was the science, there was all these different aspects, and everybody had to work together. And all the data needed to be shared, and the only thing that mattered was getting vaccines to people and getting shots in arms. I mean, I could not imagine that anybody went home and patted themselves on the back and they say, I got my part of the project on time and on budget. Who cares?
Yeah.
The only thing that matters is they go home and they say, we got the vaccine to people. We saved lives. That's the only thing that matters. Finishing your project on time and on budget is the wrong metric to use. Yeah. It's an indicator for how your project's doing, but it's not a metric of a success.
It's all about the benefits.
It has to be.
Expected benefits.
Yeah. It has to be. There's a great book, How Big Things Get Done. And one of the takeaways of that book is that 0.05% of all mega projects in the world deliver the expected benefit on time and on budget. Yeah. That's horrendous.
I had a chance to interview Professor Ben Fluvier here at the Capital Projects podcast. Yeah.
Wow. If you ever talk to him again, tell him that I absolutely love that book.
Yeah.
It's astonishing.
And another thing that will probably keep many project managers up during the night, you shared yesterday about the use of AI, especially comparing scenarios between US and what we are used to see here in Brazil. So can you please share with us the data and how you are viewing the acceleration of the use of AI, especially in the US?
Yeah. So, I mean, let's face it, AI is going to change everything.
Yes.
Right? We're going to get to 2050, and we're going to look back on, watch this podcast again and say, wow, how the world has changed, right? I mean, it's going to affect every aspect of life. Specifically for project management, it's going to propel organizations forward, right? Again, the projects that you select, fund, and execute today define who you are in the future. And the use of AI is going to ensure that AI is going to help us to make better insights and better connections, right? The metrics that I've read through the reports and books and things, and the data coming out now, here in Brazil, what I found most astonishing, the comparison, is here in Brazil, last year, only 40% of all employees were exposed to some form of AI in some aspect of their job.
Only 40%.
Only 40%. Only 40%, right? It's very, very low. There was another report by IPMA that said, and I believe it was 2020, that 65% of all project managers in the US and Europe were already using AI for project management. So,
When? Same year?
I believe that was 2020.
2020.
Yeah.
Wow. So 4 years ago.
So
Man.
I'm sure that number is a lot higher now.
Sure.
I can say there's our customers and the customers that I'm personally involved in, they're already using AI that's built in Planisware. Planisware's AI capabilities to make faster connections with their projects. One example is a large automotive supplier. Their whole world depends on deliverables.
Yes.
If a deliverable is late, then their whole project is messed up. And usually not just that one project, because that one deliverable could have impact on other projects as well. So we worked with them and we created a machine learning model to analyze all of their data and learn what makes a deliverable late. Based on all the historical data, what deliverables were late and what were the main drivers for those deliverables. For them, it was two things. It was the organization or the functional area, and it was a work breakdown structure.
Oh.
So those two things. So we took the machine learn, we take those two things, we plug those in, and then we can predict, based on all the deliverables in the future, if you have those two characteristics, most likely that deliverable is going to be late.
And everything inside Planisware.
Everything inside Planisware. It's Planisware's machine learning capabilities. Our founders were actually AI engineers in France, and they created Planisware in the 90s because they were working for an aerospace and defense company, and they were tasked with coming up with a way to marry schedules and resources together. In the 90s, I don't remember the 90s professionally, but I've told that didn't exist. So that was the foundation of Planisware, and they studied AI. They're AI engineers, and they've always been very, very passionate about AI. So we're building all this AI capabilities within Planisware. We're not acquiring it. We're building it. So that's one example. And that's phase one for them. Phase two is understand what is the impact if the deliverable is going to be late. So again, based on their data, let's teach the model. Let's go find what the impact was of all the deliverables that were late. Financially, resources, strategy, customer satisfaction, whatever the case may be. And then the third step is to have the model prescribe what they should do to avoid the deliverable being late. And again, we have the data. They have the data within Planisware. And we just need to know, okay, what were the actions? So with this late deliverable, it had this impact on all these projects. What did you do to fix it? After you realize it was late, what did you do to fix it? And let's use that to teach the model to prescribe what you should do in the future as things continue to change. So it's a great example of that distinction between, unfortunately, between sort of North and South, but of companies in the US and Europe being able to have an insight of what problem could happen and how to fix it before companies that aren't using AI or don't have a true PPM system, they don't even realize that there's a problem.
No.
So that gap between competitiveness between companies is going to grow exponentially fast. Another customer of ours using AI is using what we call swarm intelligence. Have you heard of swarm intelligence? No? It's a really, really interesting concept, and it's quite old, actually. I think it was developed in like the 70s. But it's basically, it's based on nature, right? So if you think of bees, for instance, each bee operates entirely independently, but they're all working on a collective task. And there's no central command. There's nobody, the queen bee isn't telling them what to do, right? Same thing with birds. Birds can migrate thousands and thousands of miles if they go together.
They don't have dailies, 15-minute dailies every morning.
And they don't have, but if
Sperm
one,
reveals and
but if one bird tries to migrate by itself, it'll get lost. Because as a group, and same thing with fish, right? That all go together. So it's that sort of that process that happens in nature. And there's an algorithm, and there's this artificial intelligence that's been built around that concept that we're applying to resources. So it's solving resource bottlenecks. So again, if you have all the data in one place, you can get a prediction of, hey, we're going to have too many resources. We're going to have a resource bottleneck. We don't have enough resources for all of this. And using swarm intelligence can solve that bottleneck by reducing some resources in some projects, by extending a project, by delaying a project. And those decisions are made based on the strategic goals and the priority and the value and the importance of each of the projects. So if you have your most valuable project, that's not going to be touched. The lower value projects are going to be adjusted, but it's an algorithm and it's an AI that is able to do that for us so that we don't have resource bottlenecks. And again, companies that are using that are going to see the level of bottlenecks that they have just basically hopefully disappear. Whereas companies that don't have a true PPM solution and aren't using AI or don't have all their data in one place, these companies have a solution before these companies even understand that there's a problem. So again, that gap is just going to grow exponentially.
It can also improve governance, right? Because it will prevent an executive to push forward a project which clearly don't have enough resources, or you cannot meet that deadline anyway. So it would improve a lot of governance.
And that's sort of what I discussed a little bit yesterday in my presentation, is that project managers are not going to go away. Right? No. AI is not going to, it's going to provide you with options, but not solve the problem for you, right? You still need project managers to use their skills and their strengths for what they do best, which is managing people, right? There's, if I can remember the name of it, Metcalfe dilemma, I think it's called. There's this gentleman that did a lot of research on AI. And he came up with this concept and this dilemma that AI is really, really good at what is hard for us to do. But AI is extremely bad what is easy for us to do. Talking. AI is just now starting to understand that, right? Driving a car, not so much. Super easy for us, right? Not so much for AI. Math. AI is good at that. Math's usually hard for us, right? So it's an interesting concept. And as we apply it more and more, as we apply AI more and more, the skills that we have as project managers is managing people, is managing the executives. AI, the only intention of PPM and AI is to facilitate and objectify the debate. But we as humans, we will still have to have the debate. We still have to make the decisions. We'll have insights, we'll have connections, and we'll have recommendations, solutions, options, faster. But AI is not going to be able to make the right decision. It's going to present us with a more objective view of reality and a much more complete view of reality. But we still have to have the debate. And we still have to make the decisions.
And that's good. We'll be much more strategic.
Yeah.
And we lose so much time looking for data, as you said, or doing repetitive tasks that AI can help us. And we should make a better use of that time, managing our projects with more quality of data and so on. And that's another advantage, big advantage of having all the data inside the same tool. Because once again, if you want to ask an AI tool about resource or about schedule or about cost, you need to look at different data sets.
Right.
And putting all together in the same solution seems obvious and interesting.
I wish it was that obvious for everybody, but
mainly for the executives, right?
And one thing that I found really, really interesting over the last year, this year, is we don't need more data. We have more than enough data. And to use AI, you don't even need a lot of data, right? The data just has to be available. And it has to be, going and making the data available, you will go through a data cleansing process, because that is important, right? Garbage in, garbage out. But the data just has to be available. And it has to be
reliable.
Sure, but the availability really is the key, because whatever data is available, AI is going to think that that is the complete set of data and make a recommendation on it. If it's incomplete, the analysis is incomplete. So if we ask AI to solve a bottleneck or to stay ahead of consumer trends or what makes a deliverable late, and it's only looking at a third of reality, it's going to make a recommendation on that third. There's a whole another 2/3 or whatever the percentage should be. So to your point, having as much data as you possibly can in one place that's the key.
Yeah. And you showed yesterday during your presentation, demonstrated a conversation with AI, which was really interesting.
Yeah.
Do you think that it will soon be part of our routine as project managers?
It already is.
Already
in the US and in Europe, it already is. And I would say parts of Asia probably as well, but it already is. Now, in my presentation yesterday, I faked it a little bit because we can't have a verbal conversation with a PPM bot. But in Planisware, we do have a PPM bot. And as a project manager, I can go into Planisware and I can ask, what should I focus on today? And it will go through all of the data in Planisware, look at all the projects that are associated to me, that I'm responsible for, look at all of the deliverables, look at the percentage complete, look at the expected finish, look at the cost, the priority, look at all of this metadata, and it'll come back with a set of recommendations. So it's already in use. What's not in use is that it pops up and it has sort of a physical form that you can talk back and forth. But it already exists in its infancy, right? We can use it to update all of our projects, right? If I'm responsible for 50 projects and we're going to move something happen, we're going to move all those projects from site 1 to site 2, I don't have to open 50 project files. One, in Planisware, I can do it manually. I can go and I can just simply change that whole column in a table to site 2, press save, and I'm done. But I can also say, Oscar, can you update this project? We can ask other questions of what's the expected, what is the expected value of this project? Or what is the EAC? What is the BAC? What, all these different metrics. What's the percentage complete of all these 5 projects? So there's already some very simple questions, but again, with the other models, it's going to take off. It's in the next, by 2050, I mean, the whole world is going to be entirely different, and PPM is going to be different.
Jeremy, for us to finish here, I always ask our guests here to give recommendations to our audience, to share kind of the experience. So what project managers can do in order to improve their project and portfolio management.
Yeah. My recommendation, I guess, would be a couple of things. One would be to embrace technology. You have to really start using the tools, right? The tools are available now. Embrace technology. Figure out how to take advantage of them. There's a ton of resources online. On LinkedIn, there's free courses. There's paid courses at all the universities, at adult learning. I'm going to be taking one at MIT starting in a couple of weeks. But embrace it. Invest a little bit of time, maybe a little bit of money. Embrace it. Get a leg up. We know that if we're not moving, we're a human species. We're meant to move. If you're not moving forward, you're going backwards. So get moving, right? It is very popular saying that movement is life. Get moving. Embrace technology. Embrace PPM solutions. Embrace AI. Learn as much as you can. Use it to your advantage. And tie what you do to a why. Why am I doing this? Why do I want to do this? Have it be tied to something bigger than yourself and bigger than us. Those are my 2 recommendations.
Thank you once again for being part here of the Capital Projects podcast and our to sponsor this initiative here in São Paulo.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure to talk with you, Andre.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm sure you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. So I wait for you in the next episode here, recorded directly from the PMI São Paulo Congress in São Paulo with the support of Planisware. Stay tuned.